What's up, everybody? It's your boy Insane Blaine tuning in today from Butler, Pennsylvania. I am here at the annual Butler Paranormal Conference. There's going to be vendors, a bunch of different guest speakers. If you don't know anything about the paranormal, that's basically anything weird or strange. There's going to be cryptids, which is like Bigfoot, Dogman, Mothman, weird stuff like that, ghosts, demons, aliens, all types of fun stuff. So join me today as I show you the sights and sounds of the Butler Paranormal Conference. Stay tuned, guys. Here we go, guys. Here's one table. Some of the stuff they have. I think these are some of the door prizes that we can win here at the conference that they have every year. Some shirts for the Boro Butler Organization Research of the Unexplained.
I knew it wasn't going to be enough. So instead of this being called
some information that Boro offers.
It's got to be aliens on the moon.
Here is Q.
So very high.
My buddy Brian Seach runs this, him and his wife.
Because I'm only going to have time to
some information about some of the research of the creatures that they've reported.
Aliens on the moon, which is more related to Apollo missions and astronauts. Is there something there
to Western Pennsylvania.
The last couple decades?
Some books
or
for sale.
Do you want to go aliens on Mars? We're going to talk about
some more
the
books for sale.
Of people assuming there was life there, hence the Martians
some artwork.
Earlier times. And is there a cover-up in conspiracy today?
Some more
we already have human colonies on the Mars
this is
right
Fred
now,
Saluga's table.
but it's kept from us as the public. So take one quick minute to decide, then we're going to
more conferences coming up. Some artwork. Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project. Some t-shirts.
Okay. Show me how many union meetings.
Here's some books, which I actually have this book right here at home.
Aliens on the moon, yell
hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you would like aliens on Mars, yell
More
yes.
books she has for sale. See if she has a website.
I think, Kathleen, what do you think? Kathleen making the call. She says
there's a
Mars
website if you're interested.
So maybe I'll come back next year and do aliens on the moon.
Screenshot.
All right, I'm excited that you picked this one because it goes a lot of different
more
directions.
books for sale.
I call this "What Color Are the Skies of Mars? Anomalies from the Red Planet." I've got a ton of photographic evidence. I've got some video clips in here that will at least make you think what is actually going on Mars. So definitely
more books
the most
for sale.
Earth-like of worlds. But a lot of people might be surprised to learn Mars is not the closest planet to us, nor is it Earth-size. Both of those honors actually belong to the planet Venus.
Mountain Devil.
Mars
I've seen this
bit
movie. It's a
farther away.
Bigfoot movie.
It's about half as far from the Earth as the Earth is from
movie?
the Sun, and it's only actually about half the size of the Earth. So usually every summer something
cool
comes out on
movies this
social
gentleman
media
has
that
for
Mars
sale.
is going to look as big as the full moon, and it never
Come on
actually
down.
will. The most we'll get on the sky is a very big red,
Stan Gordon, he's a great investigator. I've listened to many of shows on different podcasts, as well as seeing different documentaries that he's created. I have some of these. I have the On the Trail of Bigfoot, Paranormal Bigfoot. I've seen The Invasion.
Came up, which I'll talk about in a bit.
Hello, Stan.
So on the left, you can see two modern
That's Stan Gordon
images
himself.
of Mars taken by Hubble, and then on the right were these earlier maps, and you can see
some
that
artwork.
in terms of the dark areas, they actually do line up pretty well. But then you've got all these additional lines on there called canals. Now,
hello.
the intrigue comes in.
Some stickers and some more
lazy
artwork.
Translation of Italian on the part of people.
This is like some crystals over here.
If they didn't have Italian heritage, they looked at canali and they assumed that it meant canal.
Some more like witchy stuff, some bugs, tarot cards, sage, excuse me. Some more cool stuff.
In reality,
jewelry, crystals,
which could be a natural landform. But that's at least part of the way this idea
more
of Martians on Mars got started. So probably the most iconic
stickers.
image of all. If you want to
got some cool stickers. My daughter got me a couple, which are pretty cool.
Possibility of extraterrestrial life out there. Of course, it would be the legendary face on Mars. So it was photographed by Viking 1 and Viking 2.
Some more Bigfoot artwork, cryptid artwork, which I'm going to join. I'm going to start doing stuff like this myself.
They had orbiters, which stayed in orbit around the planet, but then they had landers that went down and photographed.
Some more jewelry.
So I'm sure that you're all familiar with the...
Here's some more books, you guys. Otherworldly. Hello. Okay. Reiki healing sessions if you're interested in that.
So it's like a blue wall. I tell people I'm more
Reiki. Some like Indian art.
That's this year, 22. The rest of
I don't care about the days.
Some hats.
women buy to frame the ribs.
Some more jewelry. Artwork. I'm gonna check out this hat right here. See how much that is.
These are still
I like that hat. Good, how about yourself? Excuse me. Some more shirts. Some horror themed shirts, which are pretty cool. Some Reiki stuff, some crystals. Some alien books. Good, how about yourself?
Good.
Good.
You want to know about ETs and extraterrestrials?
I know a little bit. I bought that book actually last year when I was here. Yeah.
Did you read it?
I haven't read it yet, but I am going to read it.
Get around to it.
Yeah, I am going to get around to it.
Since then, when you didn't get around to it, that's your natural BS meter, learning telepathy. We want you to learn so you can speak to them. Right?
Okay.
All right. I hope you read the book. Is there any questions you have?
No, not yet. I'm just looking around for now. Thank you. Tarot card readings. Hello. Some jewelry. Some more jewelry. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Alright. Some crystals. Readings. Hello. Past life stuff. This is ghost hunting tours. Looks like.
Take one, man. Take one.
Take one? Alright, cool. Alright. What's that? Some more crystals. Hello. Hi.
It's up there with one
More
of the fountains.
artwork. Hello.
Sorry, didn't mean to ruin the camera.
It's alright. And Ouija board readings. And some alchemy. Thank you. So you guys, that's pretty much all the vendors in a nutshell. Now I'm going to get ready to go film some of the speakers, so stay tuned. Hopefully you guys enjoy the video. If you made this far, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. That helps my channel grow, as well as it lets you know when more videos are coming. So thank you guys for watching, and get ready for some more cool stuff.
The Badlands Guardian on the right is found in Canada. Think to themselves, that looks exactly like vegetation. It's even actually colored green. The official explanation, though, is that astronomers say these are streaks of darker colored sand that are gradually cascading down the sand dunes that are there. So here's another image. If you just showed me just this image and didn't tell me context, I would have assumed that this was probably a pine forest in northern Canada, but this is actually right around the polar ice cap of Mars. There's an up-close look right there, another one. So, is it actually primitive vegetation, or is it simply just sand? Now, one of the infuriating things to me, and if it sounds like I'm critical in this presentation of NASA, there are absolutely brilliant men and women who work at NASA. We owe a lot of our discoveries in outer space to their fine work. But it's also infuriating to me how it seems like NASA does not always practice the scientific method. It even goes so far as to cover some things up. So this is what happened in 2004. Opportunity is roving on the surface of Mars. And then on a rock, they identify what some people right away believe is actually a fossil. This could be the first evidence of fossil life on Mars. So you would assume if you were in NASA's position, over the next couple days, you might carefully reposition the rover around it, photograph it from different angles, call other scientists in, and have a debate, could this be the first confirmed fossil? This is not at all what NASA does. So before I show you what NASA does, here's what people thought it might be. I remember seeing these in college geology class. They're all throughout the rocks of Pennsylvania. These are called crinoids. So these were marine-dwelling organisms when Pennsylvania was once covered in an ocean. So people saw the crinoids, they saw what was in the rock on Mars, they thought, hey, maybe this is a fossil. NASA's response, they pick this rock out of the literally millions of rocks on Mars to test out the rover's rock abrasion tool, or RAT. So the rover basically had a drill, and they decided on this one rock, they were going to test it out, and it totally obliterated what could have been a potential actual fossil there on Mars. Now, one of the things I'm really into, what color are the skies of Mars? If I showed you both of these images and didn't label them, probably most of us would pick the image on the left, because this is what we're used to seeing on Mars, right? It's surprising. You remember I mentioned the Viking mission. These are the Viking landers that went down to the surface while the rovers are still orbiting the planet. What you see to the right are the original color images from the surface of Mars. Notice it doesn't look unlike a desert in the southwest United States, and surprisingly, the skies are actually blue, just like skies here on Earth. So officially what happened at Mission Control, they were getting these images back throughout the day. People claimed a man who nobody had seen before quietly walked into Mission Control, went to all of the monitors, and on the dials underneath, changed the color adjustment to make everybody's monitor look more red. He then promptly left without saying a thing. Now, this trickery has continued to this day. So what you can see here is an image from NASA's Spirit rover. And sometimes what the rovers would do is they could basically take a selfie of themselves as they were taking a panorama from Mars. So the rovers today have different tools on them. What you see here is called a gnomon, which is basically a fancy word for a sundial. Astronomers at NASA can watch how the shadow progresses around the gnomon, and they can keep track of the Martian day. Now, the other thing takes a little bit of explaining. Understand when these space probes are sending things back, they don't send back full color pictures. What they do, they have color wheels inside them, and they take photographs through the different color filters. They send those back separately, and then NASA restacks them together to actually get the image. So what they do to try to help out is they send up around the gnomon these 4 color samples. We've got green, yellow, blue, and red. They know how these look on Earth, so then when they see them in these pictures, they can calibrate them correctly. Well, what people started to find, if you look really, really closely, all the colors are totally messed up. On Earth, this one is blue. Now it shows up as hot pink. This one is green. It shows up as yellow. And so 2 different universities have actually done studies, and both concluded, for some reason, they didn't speculate.
So that was the first speaker, you guys. He hit some pretty interesting subjects. I didn't film the whole thing because, I don't know, it's kind of, I don't want to bore everybody to death, but I'll just show some clips here and there for every speaker. But he had some pretty cool topics, basically about colonization on planet Mars, that there's already supposedly humans there, or could be humans there. He had on subjects saying that everything that we've seen about Mars could possibly be faked. Time travel, all types of cool stuff. But hopefully you guys like that, and I'll show you guys some more speakers here soon.
You record?
Yep.
All right. I'm Ryan. This is Carrie. This is Dave. We're the Legend Hunters. And we do documentary films on weird folklore of Pennsylvania and anywhere else.
Legends of Pennsylvania.
Legends of Pennsylvania. Bigfoot.
We're here with Insane Blaine. Having a good time.
That's it. At the annual Butler.
That's right.
Yeah, selling movies, and we have posters that go with the films. And we're going to keep Legends alive.
That's
our
it.
main goal.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Have a good day.
You too.
Yeah. Thanks, bud.
No problem.
Okay. Hello, Blaine. This is the Cosmic Ray here at the Venus table at the Paranormal Conference in Butler, Pennsylvania. And the author of 7 books about the mysteries of the planet Venus and the Venus Rising series. And if you want to get any of my books and check them out on Amazon, just go to Amazon and key in Keller Venus.
Keller Venus at
and
Amazon,
take you
guys.
right there.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. These are all the books he has. So you want to go to Amazon.com and type in Keller Venus. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Is the little dachshund who was with them. We have to walk Delcy. So he saw the Mount Cleveland picnic area. He pulled over, and they walked the dog and looked at this craft. And I have to say that Barney was a confirmed skeptic. He did not believe that any of this was possible. Betty thought that it could be, but she wasn't certain. My mother had had a sighting earlier than that. So they got back into the car, they're driving south, and they enter Franconia Notch from the north, and what they saw straight ahead was Cannon Mountain. And on top of Cannon Mountain is a signal light that planes can see. And then beside that, there is a building. And the light was on in the building, and as the craft passed over the top of the building, the light blinked out. That was something that Betty remembered. Their next stop was at the Old Man of the Mountain. It was New Hampshire's state symbol until it fell off the mountain in 2003 into Profile Lake below. But the important thing about this is that it's 48 feet from forehead to chin on the old man's profile. And the craft was hovering beside that. It appeared to be rotating. And Betty told me that it was at least 1.5 times the length of the old man's profile. They saw that it seemed to be lighted on one side, and as it rotated, they would see the dark, and then they would see the lights. They're driving south, back in the car, and Betty is becoming excited. She says to Barney, "Find another place to stop. I want us to get a look at this thing. It's coming in really close." And so he was starting to look around for a place where he could stop. But before he could, this craft swooped down beside the car. And Barney had to stop the car directly in the middle of the road so that he wouldn't be directly under the craft. It was now about 200 feet in the air. He stopped the car and he stepped out of the car. And he had the binoculars. They were on a trip where they were sightseeing, so they brought their binoculars with them. He looked up at this craft, and what he said, the way he described it, is that it looked like a giant pancake, just hanging there silently in the sky. And Betty remained in the car, in the passenger seat. The car was running. And then Barney stepped away from the car, and when he did, the craft shifted to an adjacent field. And he walked toward it, looking through the binoculars, shaking his head and saying it can't be, but it is. And there was, at this point, he could see figures standing in the window, looking down at him. Those figures, all but one, turned in unison and moved to what appeared to be some kind of panel. When they did, their arms went up. He could see them from the tops of their heads down to their knees at this time, and he said they were about the size of a pencil as he was looking at them in the distance, so quite large. And They were all dressed in shiny black uniforms, and little fin-like structures started to slide out from the craft, and something started to drop down from the bottom of the craft. He didn't know what it was. I know what it is. That is that carrier beam that carries people to craft. So when Barney sensed that he was about to be captured like a, quote, bug in a net, close quote, he was correct. He became so frightened that he ran back to the car screaming to Betty that they had to get out of there or they were going to be captured. Now, as he was getting into the car, he noticed that the craft was moving in his direction. This is what might be a carrier beam. And this is in a case that I have worked on recently. It's a very good case where 3 people were taken at the same time. One of them was a confirmed experiencer. The government had studied, or representatives from the government had studied his case, confirmed that it was real, and they were paranormal researchers with very good reputations who were there to see if they could capture evidence of a craft. This craft came in next to the moon, came down very rapidly toward them. The next thing they knew, they were no longer carrying the equipment they held in their hands. They're reeling back and forth. They're missing almost 2 hours' time. They had left their Bell and Howell video camera running in another part of the yard, and they captured a few seconds of video of these entities coming in to abduct them, and this was before the camera died. So what you can see here, I say, is it a carrier beam like this that Barney saw, or was it simply pareidolia? So, you know, the human mind's propensity to see humans in things that we look at, like the face of Jesus on a slice of toast, for example. So that could be an entity dropping off that carrier beam, and this could be her as she's coming down toward the ground and becoming more fully materialized. To quote some statistics, do you have conscious recall of observing a UFO?
The friend conveniently unidentified, most people in this case is, picked up Stone and drove him to the base where Stone hid in a car parking lot outside the back gate and saw the convoy stay for a while and left for Wright Patterson in Ohio. Okay, he has not renewed these claims since 1992 or 93. However, when challenged about his involvement in the case, he claimed that he remotely viewed that site. He hadn't been there physically, but he had seen it as a remote viewer. Well, you know, again, we want to take that as information. We have no physical evidence of anything in this case, none. Bill Bluebush, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He told investigators he was working on his car and looked up in time to see an object making an S-turn or maybe a figure 8 before disappearing into the trees. He drove out of the area using Media Road, as it's now called. At a high point, he looked down in the wooded area and saw lights in the distance. He parked his way down Bush and worked his way down steep bank toward the area where arc welding flames from a bluish spark were shining. The trees had been knocked down in the area, and about 20 feet away was an object partially buried in the ground. By this time, it was nearly dark, and Bluebush used his flashlight to examine the object. He was about 15 feet from it. Like the first witness, Romancy, we'll talk about him. He said it was an acorn-shaped device with a gold band around the bottom. The object, according to Blue Bush, was about 12 feet long and 6 or 7 feet in diameter. He thought the color was a burnt orange. He could still see bright blue sparks coming from it, and there was no sound associated with the object, and the sparkling slowed down and really stopped by the time he left the area. He reports that he could see lights coming from different directions and left the area, according to Stan. And lights wobbling in the woods, this could have been the military party. In the article, Kecksburg Incident by Stan Gordon and Vicki Cooper, Gordon stated one of them claims to have seen the object described 8 feet, and it was Bill Bush, 40 years old at the time. That night, he had been listening to the radio, and he heard the news reports about an object familiar with the territory. Blue Bush decided to go in his car, drive up the road to the point overlooking the site, and decided to go down and have a look. He knew the area, he had gone hunting there and had to cross a creek, he says. No one was around, and nevertheless he hid behind a tree and gazed at it for 15 to 20 minutes. It looked like it was burnt orange. All right? If he just sat there glitting, scissoring, and it got kind of hot and went away. Blue Bush, the witness who's supposed to have confirmed Romanski's story, told 4 local men in 1992 that if the crash was shown to be a hoax, he would tell the local people that he did it to get on TV. Now, as a law enforcement officer, I wouldn't take nothing from him. Number one, he was supposed to have been in his Corvair. Secondly, he's listening to the radio. So what did he do? Did he do it listening to the radio, or was he listening over his Corvair? Thirdly, he said that if it was a hoax, he would say he did it just to tell people it was on television. He was on television. So I would never consider anything with him. Romanski, he's a nice one here. Next key figure in the development of the crash myth was a man came out of the crowd in 1987 UFO Week mall display where Gordon and his associates were talking about the 65 incident and showing off old newspaper clippings. The character was the first to claim he had seen an acorn-shaped object in the woods with Egyptian-style hieroglyphics. The man's tale of an armed military occupation with spots in the area with machine guns. Listen to this now, machine guns, mounted jeeps escorting the military convoy carrying the object, not of this world, is right out of the crash folklore going back to Frank Scully 1950 blockbuster Behind the Flying Saucer. Not one of the many reports from TV, radio, newspapers report such frightening details. Jim Romanski was not from Kecksburg area. States he was a member of another fire department of the men that hit of 7 men which been called out to assist in the search of the downed aircraft that day. He reports the only member of the team he knew was his friend, who had died recently. That's par for the course. The search teams have been searching for over the object when it came over walkie-talkie that another team had found the crash site. Jim's team hurried over to the location and was puzzled by what they saw. Jim stood on the bank about 5 feet from the partially burned off gold-colored acorn-shaped object. He reports that it gave him the impression that someone had taken liquid and poured it into an acorn-shaped mold. This is what I was saying about the metal that fell off of it when it came in. So if this is true, then it couldn't have been this object here. All right. Jim and other firemen speculated over the object. 2 men dressed in overcoats appeared at the scene and were told the searchers that the area was now under quarantine, that they had to leave. Behind these 2 men were a group of military personnel. Jim said they passed within 5 feet of each other. Well, again, this timeline, if this is the timeline, there was no military there at the time, all right? When he and the others returned to Kecksburg Fire Department, he said it was occupied by the military. It should be noted, Romanski was a convicted felon, robbing Latrobe National Bank in '66 and sentenced for 6 years in prison. He's also involved in other criminal activities. Jim also stated that they had walkie-talkies. And Edward Myers, the fire chief, and other firemen have told me that they did not have such walkie-talkies in 1965. That was by Young. I took that out of his book. We do not have any proof. We do not even have any proof that Romanski was at Kecksburg the night on December 9th, 1965. One can learn a few lessons from Roswell concerning witnesses who make up stories that need to be verified, and there is really little evidence to prove he was even there. Now, how do we even know he was there? We don't. We're taking the word of somebody. John was riding down to meet me. I was the man in black, and I waved at him, and he waved at me, and 2 minutes later, he got run over and killed. I feel so bad about that. But anyway, it happens, I guess, when you deal with UFOs. Okay, it's stated that John Murphy reportedly managed to take several rolls of the crash site, a film of the crash site, as well as an audio recording of what he saw. Unfortunately, he could not enter the exit before the United States Army arrived to secure the crash site. They are reported to have confiscated all but one roll of film in his audio files. John reportedly, according to his wife, showed one image to his wife. It was very dark, it had a lot of trees around it and everything. I do not know how far away he was from the site. I did see a picture of sort of a cone-like thing, it's something like I've never saw. The remaining roll of film and audio Dad Murphy had is thought to have been taken during reported later encounter with reported 2 men in black. Wow. The men in black. They are coming here. Mm-hmm. Okay. They took him in the back room instead of his office. Now, why would they take you in the back room instead of your office? They feel like they're going to kick your ass.
I thought I'd say to beat him.
They do that, the men in black. They're good at that. And they kept him back there for 30 minutes. Shortly after the event, thus no pictures or data from him existed today. Oh, man. He was heavily investigating the crash and intended to come out with an in-depth documentary with pictures and such. Obviously, after Men in Black, the interview was highly edited and nothing came new again. I guess he gave Stan a copy of the uncut version, he said, in documentary Stan says it was lost. Mysteriously don't know how it got lost. All right. In 1969, Murphy was hit by a hit-and-run driver crossing the road in Ventura, California. Okay, let's go back here again. All right, so now he was coming out of the woods, and the military got his film. Okay, that cannot be. It's impossible. First of all, he was standing there talking to Mrs. Call. That's when the fireman, the state police fire marshal came down, then another guy went down there and looked at the crap. All right? It came up 15 minutes later, and John had said, well, what's down here? What's down here? Tell me what's down here. And he said, you'll have to see, I have to talk to the Army. All right? At that time, they was having a meeting out at Troopy Headquarters, State Police. So John went out there. They had the guys from the Oakdale radar station out there was there. And they were talking, and they said that they hadn't found nothing. The state police hasn't found anything. And then they said they'd seen a blue light. So the guys from Oakdale said, let's go back out there. John asked if he could go back out there with them, and they said, yeah. They all went out there, and when he got out of the car to go down, the state police fire marshal said, you can't go. All right? So that was the last he's seen. So now, when did he come out of the woods with photos? The military took him. The first time he heard of the military was when state police fire marshal was there. It's impossible that he had photos. All right? So again, we got something here that's a lie. All right?
Well, then you don't get that.
I'll get it for you.
Robert Barry. Expert tells has been making rounds in Pennsylvania across the bus for time. Flying saucer evangelist, never heard of this guy. Robert Barry hosts a Saturday night program, ET Monitor, on WGCB TV Redline, Pennsylvania. Religious station. He mixes massive film with UFOria and occasional Bible readings. They're all together. Hallelujah. Barry reports that years ago he was told by an unnamed NASA, National, whatever it is, NASA, informant that the Kecksburg UFO had been tracked. A claim that is contradicted by statements made by the North American Air Defense Command spokesman at the time. Barry also reported citing Stan Gordon as his source that a 1965 member of the Kecksburg Fire Department claims it has been contacted by NASA before the UFO crash to keep the public away from the area. The claim has been contradicted by original published reports and eyewitness statements. James Olberg, here's another gem. He's on my side. James Olberg, an expert on Sylvia spacecraft, who was also a UFO skeptic, amended his theories about Cosmos 96. In the beginning, he said it could never come down. It could have never been it. He said then he said that the failed Sylvia probe, whose booster had blown up in parking orbit, would have been a wonderful UFO. It could have been just as a rocket stage of a larger piece of space junk, he wrote. The probe could have headed towards Kecksburg. Olberg proceeded to explain why the U.S. military would lie. Now, we get into this big thing with the U.S. military lying. Everybody knows the government lies. They do not tell anything that is the truth. All right? How many of you have heard of MK Ultra? All right? When they had the hearings in the 1970s, every MK Ultra paper was supposed to have been burned, so nobody could find the evidence. It's the same thing with this. The fragology files that they had, they were missing from NASA files, they were throwing away. They didn't want nobody to look at them because we had an agreement with Russia that we wouldn't do this. So I don't know what's so hard to believe about that. Okay, but he says that he proceeds to explain why the U.S. military would lie or decide not to divulge. In the 60s, the U.S. military intelligence agency interested in enemy technology were eagerly collecting all the Soviet missiles and space debris they could find. International law required that the debris be returned to the country of origin, but hardware from the Cosmos 96 with a special missile warhead shielding be too valuable to get back. After all, he concluded, what a better camouflage to let people think the fallen object was not a Soviet probe but a flying saucer. The Russians would never suspect the Air Force laboratories could examine the specimen at leisure. And if suspicion lingered, the UFO buffs would be counted on to maintain the phony cover story, which everybody did, protecting the real truth. For that reason, Olberg concluded the Kecksburg scenario produced a delicious irony. A famous UFO case may actually involve a real USO government cover-up, but the UFO buffs are on the wrong side. Instead of exposing the truth, they may be unwitting pawns in the deception. Air Force bases. Now we come to some good stuff here. Okay. Since the Kecksburg case, Lockport Air Force Base, Columbus, Ohio. Since the Kecksburg case appeared on Unsolved Mysteries, several people have offered additional information. One of them was a Westmoreland County man who was a member of the United States Air Force Station in Lockport in December 1965. Robert Adams, not his real name, we know that. Said the base was played on red alert. Now, this is another incident of embellishment. Okay, in military and civilian defense, the most urgent form of alert is signaling an enemy attack believed to be imminent. What the hell would the enemies want to take the UFO? Was the aliens actually coming down to Lockport to get it? So I don't really believe it was placed on red alert. All right? Again, that's embellishment. A member of the Air Force Police said his unit was immediately dispatched to hangars where they assumed guard positions. He said that a flatbed truck with a tarpaulin-covered object the size of two Volkswagens. Another interesting thing about this case, everybody that's seen this object described it as a Volkswagen, the size of a Volkswagen. And that's impossible too. If you ever investigate any kind of crime, no two people say the same damn thing. All right? It's the same when investigating UFOs. If you investigate UFOs, one will say it was a pink, one will say it was blue, one will say it was green, one will say it was orange. Here we got 50 people. Oh my God, it was the size of a Volkswagen. Well, did they believe it was the size of a Volkswagen, or was they actually coached into saying it was the size of a Volkswagen? When he interviewed, well, did it look like the size of a Volkswagen? Oh yeah, it looked like the size of a Volkswagen. All right. He stated the truck entered the base through the rear gate, which he said was highly unusual since the gate is located on an extremely remote area. He stated, Well, he also stated that, I don't see it here, but he also stated he had orders if anybody came near it, shoot him to kill. Shoot to kill? Surely you jest. Anybody in the military would know that's bullshit. They don't even do that with people from the Middle East. They got down in Gizmo. Okay, he also stated President Kennedy came to base while he was at Lockhorn and there was no such, security was not as high as it was that morning. Again, you got the President of the United States there and you got a raggedy ass thing coming down there from Kecksburg and the security's higher. Now we come to the good one. Oh, well, here it is right here. Okay, the Lockhorn account bears certain similarities to 1954 tale from the same city that proved to be untrue or unsubstantiated, Mosley. Part of his earlier story seems to have been listed almost verbatim from Behind Flying Saucers by Frank Scully, the 1950 bestseller, one of the first American flying saucer books, and stimulated many UFO crash tales. Wright Patterson. This is interesting here. This is really cool. All right. So Art Bell. Y'all heard of Art Bell, right? Mm-hmm. So this guy's on Art Bell. Myron is his name. That's not his real name. But that's the name we use for him, Myron. Okay, sounds good. Like Myron Coke. That's when Myron Coke was going to football. So, I'll just use Myron. I mean, what the hell? So when Myron snuck inside the hangar, well, anyhow, let me see something. Okay, what had happened, oh, Christ. I think somebody put the hex on me. Yes, sir.
Motherfuckers.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. We'll get back to it, we got time. Okay, so what had happened, they took it to Wright Patterson, all right? And he says that a Navy guy came to the place, the brick place, and they ordered 1,600 and I think 50 bricks. They had to do something, they didn't say what. So in the beginning he said that his nephew went down there the day before he did, but then he changed it. But anyhow, they did the bricks because this thing was going to be locked up in a building and entombed in a building because of radiation, all right? But he says in the movie that the building was a World War II training center at Wright Patterson. Well, it had to be built in the 30s. Did they have radiation back then? And the bricks that they're making it from, there wouldn't have been no such bricks. I imagine. But that's what he said. All right. So now he says he snuck into the hangar. This is cool. He saw a bell-shaped device, some 4 millimeters high, sitting there. Several men wearing white anti-radiation suits were inspecting the object. After he was escorted out of the building, he was told the object would become common knowledge in 20 years from now. That's one of the first ones he said. Later on in another sighting, he said he and his cousin delivered radiation bricks to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and witnessed the object. He reports that he watched the military personnel in protective suits and several methods, blow torches, a liquid which assumed to be some type of acid attempt to light open the object. But he also said when he was there, what brought him down, there was a Jeep that led him there. And guess who was in the Jeep? Could it be a sergeant? No. Could it be a lieutenant? No. It was a 4-star damn general. Wow. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. They don't take no little people with him. So, after he's seen this, now he's stuck into this building, which is a classified area, all right? Now you get shot there, all right? They did this successfully. How long was he in the building watching them cut this thing open? Don't say, but he had to be there for a while, all right? They removed something and placed it on a table under a white sheet. So they cut this thing open, and I guess they just go in and grab this green thing or whatever the hell, and they take it and they place it under a white sheet. The truck driver saw what appeared to be the arm hanging over the table, covered with he described as something reminiscent of reptilian skin of a dark red-green color. The arm extended in a hand composed of 3 fingers. Now, let's think about Superman. Is it possible that this green thing lived on a planet named Kryptonite? And the planet was getting ready to be blown up. So his green mommy and daddy decided to put him in the thing and send him down to Earth. But he didn't live long enough to where Superman came and stuff, so we feel sorry for him. But I also read, when I'm doing this now, somebody said they've seen him and he only had 2 fingers, and they were green. Next will be 1 finger, will probably be this one.
Man.
He's trying to get a job as a stand-up comedian. The truck driver was threatened. They told him he had seen nothing and that they could lose him in the area spaces around the area. But he wanted to relate his experience before he passed on. Poor man, such a great person. Okay, now, his claims first surfaced around 1989, the same time the claims of bodies surfaced around a Roswell event. Well, there were bodies on Roswell, there damn well better be some bodies here at Pittsburgh. The witness made no mention of this earlier taped interviews with the late Leonard Springfield, the other investigators, including Stan. There's no reason to take this anonymous claimant at face value. Among other things, that he makes a fishy story that his cousin, who he claimed to be present at the first, said that he didn't even remember the incident. He didn't even know about it. Then he changed his mind later on. He also claimed, this is what I like, he also claimed the loss of all the records, their visit to Wright-Patterson, which the family owned. His claim that a truckload of bricks was unloaded by hand. How in the hell long is it going to take to unload 1,600 bricks? By hand. And this was in December, so it had to be a little bit cold. It wasn't warm. All right? But he did it by hand so they could allow him to go roam freely among the base. Wow. If you go to any brickyard to investigate this detail, you'll find the bricks are handled by cranes and pellets. What the hell? Wow. They're out to get there. Okay, then we have Michael Rambacher, who was in Air Force Security Unit at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, also spoke about the Pittsburgh incident. He reports he was in security and they were instructed about it, adding that he arrived at the base in '66, 1 year from the incident. He talked about it, the item was brought in on a flatbed truck from Pennsylvania. At the time, there was no access to it, and we were told that it was being studied. He put 2 and 2 together and figured it was the Pittsburgh object. That's what everybody did. They all figured it out after they sat down and they thought about, oh my God, this is the Pittsburgh object. He never saw the object, but his roommate and others in his bunkhouse reportedly saw and described its shape and markings. Now, the original 95 or 96, Cosmos 96 was about 3 feet high and 2 feet in diameter. It was a lot smaller than the thing that they found. But he said that it was 3 feet high and 2 feet in diameter. He also said it had a rim around the bottom and there was no seams. It appeared to be one solid piece. He also said it had lines and circles and squiggly looking markings on it. So one of the newspaper guys, I forget his name, was there the night it crashed, and he said he had seen a truck taking out something that appeared to be the size of 2 or 3 suitcases, and it was covered over. All right, so if you get 2 or 3 suitcases to be about that high, that would be about the size what he's saying there. So it's possible that they took it out before everybody even left. And the whole thing is being jetted out of there and with going so fast that they run over you if you didn't get out of their way, never even happened. Here we go. Conclusion. Okay, now, National UFO Center, January 9, 2014. Major George Flyer reported that this is an interesting case, so he contacted an old friend, Colonel Ray Sleeper, who was the commander of the Foreign Technology Division, Technology Center at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He reported that Colonel Sleeper came to him and told him the object was that Kecksburg incident was advanced Russian satellite based on Nazi UFO technology. They had kept it secret. They kept it secret based on an agreement with the Soviet Union. I believe that. That's what happened. I'm afraid to push his button. Clark McCullough. Okay, this is one of Stan's friends. Concerning this case, a friend of mine from Greensburg, Pennsylvania, whose name is Stan Gordon. Stan pursued his investigation with hopes of proving the object to be an alien spaceship from outer space. It was not. Believe me, Stan, I wish that was the case. Stan has accomplished a remarkable job of investigation, research analysis, and plain grit on the Kecksburg case. Stan has informed me that he will continue to pursue his belief. I support his efforts in doing so. NASA changes its story to Russian satellite. Now, when they said they didn't have, okay, fragology files. Does everybody know what the fragology files are? That's when they take the thing apart and they look at it. Well, all the fragology files from Kecksburg error was missing. NASA said they lost them. Well, NASA's lying. I mean, they should have them. It wasn't this and it wasn't that. Now, in 2005, they said that it was that. Oh, no, it ain't that. So what the hell is it? One day it's not this and one day it's not that. It has to be something. Okay. The object appears to be a Russian satellite that re-entered the atmosphere and broke up. As I said, coming through, boom, 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 the stuff was falling off. I mean, can you imagine looking up and seeing something big as a baseball come and hit you in the head? NASA experts studied fragments from the object, but the records of what they found was lost in the 1990s. Like I say, the government, if there's somebody in the government here, I really don't care. You guys are liars. You lie about your mother, your father, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your kids. That's what you're paid to do. So let's get that straight, all right? I know a couple of them. Anyhow, so as a rule, they said they don't track UFOs. What we could do, and what we apparently did as experts in spacecraft in the 60s, was take a closer look at whatever it was and give our expert opinion. We did that, bought the case up, and that was the end of it. And fortunately, the documents supporting these findings were misplaced. And that's because if it ever came to the point where they had to look at them, they didn't have them. This is something really interesting in this case. Nothing's there. There's no evidence of anything. No physical evidence of anything in this case. It's all on hearsay. All right? Oh, there we go again. Boom. Okay. UFO Magazine, UK. That sounds like United Kingdom. In September, October 1994 issue of UFO Magazine, UK, there was an article which claims that the object recovered was a Soviet Cosmos 96 satellite, which apparently suffered a booster failure after being launched as a rocket payload on November 23, 1965. I understand John, whatever his name is, he had to be Polish with this name, that I'm part Polish, so don't nobody say, oh my God, he's talking about the Polish people now. Has to be if I care. Made an on the article. However, there still seems to be some controversy as to what, if anything, it was recovered. Fortunately, the UFO Magazine article contained photographs of, somebody say something? Wow. Now I'm hearing things up here. Maybe they're beaming me with some shit up here. I'm in the frequencies, man. I think they're starting to hit me with a few. Anyhow,
kiss my ass.
It's not funny. Fortunately, the UFO Magazine article contained a photograph of the Cosmos 96 satellite. So go to the back of the article above. It was shaped like an acorn, lying on its side, like an acorn nut in its shell when it's on a tree. Cosmos 96 was apparently intended to be a Venus probe.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, hi, my name is Brian Seach. I'm the director of the Center for Cryptozoological Studies, and we're here today at the Butler, or the 14th Annual Butler Paranormal Conference.
Okay, now explain a little bit about kind of what you do with your group.
Well, we're an organization that researches cryptids, anything that's strange and unknown, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, Thunderbirds, things like that, Dogman.
All right, cool. What area do you guys normally take encounters from or investigating?
Well, we used to live in Hopewell, which is in Beaver County, and now we just moved to outside of Weirton, West Virginia. But we take basically reports from southwestern Pennsylvania, now the panhandle of West Virginia, and eastern Ohio, wherever we can get them.
Okay, and let me ask you, what has been your most recent case that you guys have been investigating?
One of the most recent cases. Let me think here. Caught me off the spot. We did receive an older Dogman report out of Beaver County. This would have happened in the 90s, where two eyewitnesses and their dog were walking, and all of a sudden the dog, it was a black lab, it dropped to all fours, okay,
wow.
and it on its stomach, and it started to shake. And just then they were two boys at the time, and they looked up on this hill and they saw this large Dogman type creature. It was on all fours. It started to walk across until it got right next to the side of the woods.
Okay.
And then it stood up on two legs. It looked at them, and then it walked off into the woods.
Wow, that's very fascinating. Now, my final thing that I'd like for you to answer, if anybody has any encounters or anything strange that they'd like to report to you, where can they do that, or how?
Best way is probably on Facebook. We have two websites, or two Facebook pages, Center for Cryptozoological Studies and Center for Unexplained Events. So you can just message us there, and all names will be confidential. We never give out names.
All right, well, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your time here at the conference.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for coming and supporting us.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Use it, can't remember, other animals will use it also as a communication tool. So it's possible the Bigfoot will use it as both a weapon to help stun prey and as communication also. My friend, he used to go to the big conferences, and he would talk about finding Bigfoot up in trees, and everybody laughed at him, including the big Not Finding Bigfoot organization. They all laughed at him, but now that's what they talk about. Well, we went to Oklahoma, my sister and I. This was March 2017. We stayed out there for a week and had a fantastic time. Just about everyone in the group had a sighting. There were 14 of us. And we would travel around, and we would take about 7 trucks, pickup trucks, to where we were going to, and sit in combined rides, and go out in these godforsaken areas out in Oklahoma, southern Oklahoma. If you're a serious Bigfooter, get out there. I can tell you exactly where. Chickasaw National Recreation Area, Sulphur, Oklahoma. Get out there. It's well worth the trip if you're a serious Bigfooter. Take someone experienced with you, though. Things can get hairy. Literally. One night we were in this area called Purgatory. It's nicknamed Purgatory. Some violent interactions has happened there back in the day. A lot of things went on in that area. Plus, it's might be known for some paranormal activity also. I don't delve too much into that because I try to stay away from ghosts. I've had some experiences with haunted houses and so on, and I have no interest in going any further. But we were down in Purgatory, and my friend was trying out a new technique with calling Bigfoot in. And it's very successful. He would use it every night, and yeah, every single time it worked. They would come in. This one night at Purgatory, he called them in. We heard one vocal, in fact it was a roar, from about 3 miles out that way. Got another response to the north that way. Third response out that way, a couple miles out. And they're roaring all the way in, and they're getting closer and closer and closer. And we're standing there thinking, okay, well, everybody's armed. But, you know, they came in, but they stopped about 50 feet out. They were up in the brush, you know, around, you know, surrounding us. And, you know, they were just sitting there watching us. And I think that they were waiting for something else to happen, because this technique that my friend used, it's an instrument that's used. They mention it in the Bible, in the Old Testament. What brought the walls of Jericho down?
Trumpet.
Exactly. A shofar. Now this was a special shofar. There are different types of shofar. This was a specific type of shofar that is used for this, for like the extra high holy occasions. And you have to hit a certain pitch whenever you blow it. It's not just blow it and they come. You have to hit a certain pitch. And they come running. But this night, you know, they were around us. And we could see the eye shine, we could hear them. We knew they were there. But they didn't come any closer, thank God. And eventually they backed off, they went away. So it's like, but we got out of there, and in the meantime, you know, my sister, she's, at that time, she was not very experienced. Whenever we would go, you know, every single night, we would go all these different places, have all these great things happen. She would be sitting in the back seat of the pickup truck, playing on her phone, playing Words with Total Strangers or whatever those games are. And she's totally oblivious as to what's going on. I kept hollering at her and saying, Deb, if you want to see a Bigfoot, you got to get off your phone. And I said, yeah. Well, next night, no, same night, we pulled out of Purgatory. One guy was having trouble with his pickup truck. So we pulled over into a parking lot of a casino. This is on a Native Indian reservation. There's casinos everywhere, on every single reservation out there, every single. Now this particular casino, pretty well known for the Bigfoot coming around. Handprints were found, footprints, you know, around the dumpsters. You know, so, and the employees are afraid to go out at night. They refuse to go out taking the trash out at night because they know the Bigfoot are out there raiding the dumpsters. hey, go to a casino, eat the buffet. The dumpsters are the Bigfoot buffet. Get the food easy access. Now we're sitting in this parking lot. All the other guys are out. They have their heads underneath the hood of this pickup truck that's broken down. 4 of us stayed in my friend Dave's pickup truck. Dave was in the front seat driving. Chuck was in the front passenger seat. I was sitting behind Dave, and my sister was behind Chuck. As usual, my sister's on her phone. Same with Dave. He had never seen a Bigfoot. Gee, I wonder why. He's on his phone. As soon as the truck stopped, he's on his phone. And so Chuck and I were the 2 more experienced people in the truck, no matter where we're at. Situational awareness. Doesn't matter where you're at. You stay alert. You look around. Be aware of your surroundings. Here comes this Bigfoot running out from between the casino and the building next door, across this brightly lit parking lot, 12:30 at night, all the way across the parking lot, through the pickup trucks, across the 4-lane highway, and into the woods on the other side. And offhand, I cannot remember the distance. Wish I could. I should have looked it up. But later on, whenever I got home, I was able to get on the Google, and I was able to figure out, take the distance and the time that it took him to run that distance, which Chuck and I both agreed was approximately 3 seconds. And I was able to figure out his speed. Any guesses?
45.
53.
60.
We had a couple close ones there. Got right in between. I figured on the average, in which case you both were right, I figured 52 miles an hour. He was running full out.
Damn.
And, here we are at this casino. This security guard comes out wondering what's going on. And I went over and talked with her. I said, please tell me you have security cameras. And you have to have security cameras covering the parking lot. And she said, yeah. And I said, do you think it would have caught that Bigfoot? She said, oh yeah, I know it did. And I said, do you think that the casino would be willing to share that footage? She said, nope, no way. They want their customers to return. They don't want them to be scared away. Knowing that there's Bigfoot hanging around. Hey, it happens. Here's a chance to get, what would have been outstanding footage. And security won't share it, and the casino, for business reasons, won't share it. Okay, that was 2017. Ooh, I almost forgot. That trip, the following night, my sister got so mad at me for bugging her about always having her head in her phone. She said, okay, I'll put it down and I'll pay attention. So, we were in this fantastic area, multiple Bigfoot around. You could see them, the guys, with their FLIR, they could see a couple up on the road ahead. My friend got out of his truck, turned his FLIR on, brought it up, and here's this really bright white hot spot in front of his flare, and he took it down and said, something wrong with this, and put it up again. Here, there's a Bigfoot, 30 feet in front of him, just standing there, looking at him, and then it walked on, went into the woods. And what's funny is, whenever it walked into the woods, it went behind a tree. It was just a sapling. It went behind this tree, peeked around. Big butt hanging out one side, peeking out the other side. That trip was outstanding, I tell you, but later that night, whenever we were all done, we're driving out, in our convoy of pickup trucks. There were, I think we were next to last in line. So we were pulling out, went around the curve, and the headlights from the vehicle behind us shone into the trees ahead of us. And, we drove on, and my sister said, in a really shaky voice, she said, "I think I saw something." And I said, "Okay, Deb, what did you see?" And she said, "Something fuzzy." And I said, "Okay, was it big? Was it little? Use your words, Debbie." She was in shock, absolute shock. She saw a Bigfoot sitting in a tree, in the Y of a tree, holding on to the other branches next to it, just sitting there with his legs dangling. And as we went past, the ladies in the vehicle behind us said that they saw it jumping down right after we passed. So there's the backup, to a confirmation of her sighting. So you talk to her now about it, she will shake. I would say she suffers PTSD after that. It's and it happens to so many people, who have, a sighting of something so monstrously huge that shouldn't exist. They hear us talking about it. It's like, yeah, okay, right. I kind of believe you, and I can say I believe you, and I'm 90%, 95%, 99% certain that Bigfoot exists. But until they have that sighting themselves, there's still that little kernel of doubt in their minds. Right, Bill? And so they suffer from PTSD. And I try to help, people like that, because in my group we have almost 16,000 members. We're on Facebook. Please join us, Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project. I have a fantastic group of admins and moderators who protect my members. Anytime a troll rears their head, they get booted out real quick. We don't tolerate harassment or ridicule of any type in my group. Okay, now, last one, number 5. We moved to Lawrence County, Shenango Township, and brand new house, newly built. I knew they were there even before the house was fully built because I found their footprints around the foundation. So I said, okay, well, we're further out in the country, so I figured pretty much they'd be there. I just didn't think that close. One day I'm sitting on my brand new front porch enjoying the sunshine, looking across the road into the field, the cow field across, and there's a wood line at the top of the hill. And I'm just sitting there enjoying, watching the cows. Here comes 3 deer walking out of the woods on the other side of the fence and walking down the hill. Behind them, about 50 feet, here comes a Bigfoot. Just walking slow, following them down the hill. The deer turn and cut into a trail, game trail, back into the woods at the bottom. Here comes the Bigfoot, following him, cuts into the woods behind them. And I'm thinking, okay. This one was a little bit different than the other ones that I had seen. The other ones were more bulky built, larger, husky. This one was more thin and with a, what I would term an athletic build. And his hair was like a grayish brown, a little bit more gray in his hair. I've seen him twice more since then. I'll take my dog out late at night, for last call, and I'll be calling her in, and I can see the deer trotting across at the bottom of the property, and here he is racing up behind them. The one night he cut in and he ducked in to my brand new neighbor who built a house, I would say next to us, but country next. He ducked into the shadows beside their chimney, and he stayed there until I went back into the house. Another night, I let the dog out, and I'm looking over to my neighbor's driveway. He's got a high pickup truck, and I saw him again. He's standing next to this pickup truck on the other side, head and shoulders above. You think that, you don't see them. I don't see them all the time, but my eye is trained now. I know their movements. I know their shape. I can recognize them whenever I see them now. Some people ask, do you think you could possibly be tagged, or do you think it's possible for them to somehow tag you? And after some digging and research into EMF, that yes, it is possible of certain people being what they call tagged, so that they don't feel so shy about showing themselves to us. And yeah, it's years or months or whatever in between sightings. I don't see them every night. This is months later, years later, decades later. Yes?
Do you feel like you've been followed by several or one?
Do I feel like I've been followed by several or the one? Do you mean from the other house? I have been followed whenever walking in the woods. I've heard them pacing me, paralleling me, like maybe 50 feet off to the side, hidden in the brush. But for the one to follow me to the new house, it's not the same individual. It's a totally different individual. I found territorial markers below us, so I know that the one at our former house, he wouldn't cross into another alpha male's territory. It wouldn't happen. He'd have a really big battle on his hands that he don't want to get into. Yes?
What are around smell like?
I haven't smelled anything. The smell isn't constant. There's primates that will put off, they have scent glands in their hands and feet, and under extreme stress, they'll put off that really bad stink, that you hear about. But I've never smelled it. Well, in association with them, I've never smelled it. I have smelled it whenever I didn't see them in certain areas, but
I was told that they smelled like a combination of sulfur and feces and a compost.
yeah, they smell like, the smell that you smell, it's pretty horrendous and gut-wrenching and nauseating. If you get a good whiff of it, it'll make you throw up. It's a combination of boys' locker room, a slaughterhouse, and compost heap. It's an awful smell. That's about the best I can describe what I have smelled and what friends of mine describe also. Yes.
When you see one down by your neighbor's truck, do you call your neighbor and say, look out your window?
No, this was 3 a.m. And no, the people at my old house, I haven't warned them. What I've asked them if they've seen anything and if they've seen any wildlife. And all the other neighbor has mentioned is that he's seen deer and rabbits and groundhog. The new neighbor, they don't bother. This one at my new place, he hasn't bothered me. He hasn't bothered anyone else because I've spoken with other neighbors who have seen sign. They've seen maybe not him, but another Bigfoot in the area. They'll come to me and report different things, but nothing has happened. Nothing threatening. Nothing violent. If they would start to get violent or start taking pets or whatever, then I would give out a warning. But so far, so good. My neighbors think I'm crazy to begin with. So if you see my pickup truck out in the parking lot, I've got my logo on both sides of the truck. It's a big blue Ford F-150 with a cap on it, and they see that and it's like, whatever. Yes?
Were you frightened by your first sighting, and did that ease up over time? Did fear go away?
Was I frightened at my first sighting?
The first time you saw your Bigfoot, and did you ease up? Did the fear kind of go away after a while?
To be honest, no, I was not afraid. At that time, I thought it was just a big, hairy man walking through the woods.
Was that a slow process of coming to the realization that wasn't it? I mean, it's sort of like a denial that you're kind of like trying to find an alternate explanation for it initially. I'm not trying to answer your question for you. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. No, I haven't felt fear, to be honest, at any of my sightings because I haven't been threatened by any of them. The one coming around the house, I was more angry, and that's a nice word. And he just made me angry. The other ones, they were not threatening in any way. They were just going about their business, and that's how I look at it. Unless they're actively threatening me, hey, go ahead, do what you're doing. In my organization, I've got a motto, and the first word in the motto is respect. And that respect is for myself and my admins, my members, but more importantly, for the Bigfoot. Respect the Bigfoot, respect their territory. If you go into their territory, you're searching for them, be respectful. If you get rocks thrown at you, just back off, be respectful. They're defending their territory. Not only the territory, they're defending their babies.
Told you.
Man is dangerous. Man is deadly. They'll protect their little ones just like we would protect ours. Yes, ma'am.
Seen a handful of several of them.
Yes.
I've never seen one. Do you have any pictures you could show us?
Nope. Nope. Quite frankly, no. That's the last thing on anyone's mind. Whenever you see a Bigfoot, tell you what, you have 3 seconds. Take your camera out of wherever you have it and take a quick picture of that guy moving back there.
I believe that.
3 seconds.
Like 5 foot away from me the other day when I was driving.
It's over. Your sighting is over. And in the meantime, you're in shock. Your hands are shaking, adrenaline's running. This is a creature that shouldn't exist. This is just awe-inspiring, fear-inducing, terror-inducing in most people. And yeah, it's taking a picture is the last thing on your mind. Unless you have a GoPro already running, that's about the only way you're going to get a picture and pointing in the right direction. Yes, ma'am. Right. Very few. They can be caught by a trail camera, but on the most part, they'll avoid them because it's possible that they see the infrared, and it's also possible that they'll hear the whine as it cycles, and also the plastic smell, the human smell is pretty potent on there. Even bears will go after a trail camera. Any hunters here who's had their camera pulled down, destroyed by a bear? Yeah, a bear will do that also. So we can surmise that, yeah, Bigfoot can also. But there are...
Hi, my name's Blaine, and this is I'm filming for my YouTube channel called Insane Blaine, and your name is?
My name's Jim Sparks.
Jim Sparks, okay. What do you do?
I'm an all-around paranormal investigator. I do everything from UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, and where I at is one of the very first Dogman reports.
Awesome. That's probably my favorite cryptid, which I found out about roughly 5 to 10 years ago. So what area do you research in?
I research mostly Shenango Dam right now in Mercer County.
Okay, and that's Pennsylvania, correct?
That's Pennsylvania, yes.
Okay. And I guess what would be your most recent case that you've done, or favorite case that you've done? That
my favorite case I've done, I was researching up at the Shenango Dam. A ex-Marine Corps drill sergeant was walking down the trail, and a Bigfoot creature came out of the swamp in front of him and growled at him, and he ran off into the woods. He turned and walked back home, and he moved. And he said, when I talked to him, he said, I had my 9mm with me, and I wasn't going to pull it out because it was going to make it mad.
Wow.
And he's 6'5". He said he was looking up to this thing like he felt like a little kid.
Wow, that's a great story. Thank you so much, and I really love the shirt.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one, man.
You too.
The elements of the narrative are repeated often enough that they're taken as fact. Now, if you look at urban legends in Wikipedia, it brings up all kinds of stuff. Some of which pertain to the paranormal community. some of these I found a little interesting, that the Wikipedia considered them urban legends, like Area 51, the Bell Witch, Bigfoot or White Things, if you're familiar with those, Black-Eyed Kids, the Flatwoods Monster, Jersey Devil, the Hopkinsville Goblins, just all kinds of things. Men in Black, Mothman, you know, as many people that saw the Mothman, as many witnesses over a considerable period of time. It's listed as an urban legend, which is curious. Roswell's another one. Skinwalkers, Dogman. A couple of my favorites. One in particular, the urban legend of big cats. If you ask the Game Commission here in Pennsylvania, they'll say they don't exist. I saw a mountain lion when I was about 13 years old. The only one in the family believed me was my grandmother, because she had seen them on the same property. It was walking on the meadow across from my parents' house. Years go by, and I work, I'm semi-retired. I work 3 days a week for a government agency that does soil and water conservation work. And I was talking to the Game Commission at this event one time at the Fayette County Fairgrounds, and we were talking about mountain lions, and I said, well, I saw one when I was about 13. And the guys in the Game Commission were kind of laughing at me, and they said, well, who is it you work for? And I said, well, I work for the United States Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources Conservation Service. And they went, oh. And they quit laughing. So, you know, again, they'll tell you it's an urban legend, but you ask anybody that's in at least the northern half of West Virginia and western PA, a lot of people see mountain lions, Fayette County, Greene County. I guess it depends on, you know, who you're talking to, whether or not they want to believe you. Now, a really good example of an urban legend is the book Tony did with Thomas White called Haunted Roads of Western Pennsylvania. And like I said earlier, I look at Greene County as a microcosm of the spirit world. And there's a story that in Tony's book called about the Crybaby Bridge. Well, the Crybaby Bridge is one of those things that's probably in nearly every community. But the Greene County has a little different twist, because there's a certain ritual you have to do to get the apparition to appear, and to look for the baby that, depending on which version you heard, it was either stillborn or thrown off the bridge into the creek or whatever. But it's a really good example of a typical American urban legend, and Tony did a good job of documenting, you know, the uniqueness of the Greene County version. Another local urban legend is the Greene County Historical Society. There is alleged to have been, at one point, probably late 1800s, an individual who was probably developmentally disabled either had a baby that was stillborn, or her baby was cold, and she put it in the oven to warm it and baked it. So the story is, and this has been in the local paper, so it could very well be true. The story is, when the residents of the poorhouse woke up the next day, they thought they could smell meat cooking, and they thought they were going to have a really good breakfast. Well, it turned out it was this baked baby. But again, if you look at Tony's work and some other people's work, the baby in the oven is another very common urban legend. Now again, this one very well may be true, because it was in the local paper. There are some people that claim to have been descendants of the woman who actually did it. So there again, quite plausible, could be true, has the elements of an urban legend. But what makes this one unique is they don't really come out and say this, but it's kind of a neat selling point for the historical societies. They're using the oven now to sell things like pepperoni rolls and that sort of thing, and pizza. So the thing is, hey, you know, you want a piece of pizza out of the baby oven. But you know, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I think it helps them sell their baked goods. Another
Nothing like some big
urban legend, from according to Wikipedia, is Dogman. You know, the elusive Dogman. Became really popular about 1987 with a song called "The Legend" that was done by a guy named Dave Cook as an April Fool's prank. But you know, Linda Godfrey started doing some work thanks to the Beast of Bray Road. It was discovered that Dogman actually started appearing in the Michigan area in 1887, and it sort of slowly gained a little notoriety until this song came out. And then all of a sudden, everybody was familiar with Dogman because of this prank tune. I haven't heard it, but I'm assuming it must have been pretty catchy. Dogman has a little additional status now. If you look on social media, some people consider Dogman to be an alpha predator. I'm a little skeptical of that. I'm in the woods a lot, and you would think you'd see some evidence of that, but you don't. It's one of those things that's kind of amusing. You know, guys will say, it's not, I'm going to go out and look for Dogman, but the same guys that are saying Dogman's an alpha predator, they're saying, well, I'm going to go out and use myself as bait, and we're going to trap Dogman. And I actually saw this in a chat room, and I thought, well, that'd be pretty cool if you could be like Michael Jackson in Thriller, you know, pop a big bowl of popcorn and just sit on the opposite hill and see, you know, after you catch a Dogman, what do you do with it? You know, you take it and get him spayed and get his ear clipped? Or... So you know, there's people see Dogman, and I believe they're seeing something. There's a young guy and his wife told me a really good, very credible story of Dogman. I believe they saw one. I talked to a couple other people. I believe they saw what in their mind was a Dogman. Could have been a form of Sasquatch, I don't know. But you know, part of the thing with coming from a farm background, you're kind of naturally skeptic. You know, you're skeptical of things. I'm a little skeptical of hunting Dogman, and Dogman is an alpha predator. I could be wrong, but I'm a skeptic. So one of the really neat things about Dogman is a report from 1936, and I learned this from looking at some of an interview with Linda Godfrey. A Dogman was seen twice digging into Native American burial ground in Jefferson County, Wisconsin in 1936. 2 nights in a row by the same gentleman, Mark Shackleman, who was a night watchman at the St. Coletta Institute in Jefferson County, which was a Catholic institution. I believe they worked with developmentally disabled individuals. And this Dogman, according to the Shackleman report, said a word that sounded like Gadara. Now, we'll get back to that a little later, but it's intriguing for me from the lore standpoint. And other creatures that were similar to Dogman had been seen in that area over the years. So in the paranormal community, in my opinion, the barrier between urban legends and sacred cows is nebulous or porous at best. Now here's a good example. And I'm not sure what happened to the font here on this, but it's just one of those quirky paranormal conference things. The Battle of Los Angeles. You've all heard of that, right? Okay, it was 24th, 25th of February 1942. A slow-moving target was tracked over LA. At 3:16 a.m., it was engaged by the anti-aircraft artillery of the 37th Coastal Artillery Brigade. Ceasefire was ordered at 4:14, so they fired on it for not quite an hour. All clear was sounded at 7:41. And a lot of researchers will say, you know, this is very important that they fired 1,440 rounds of heavy artillery shells. It was a almost a 13-pound shell were fired at this target during the engagement. So if you look at the, again, I apologize for the change in font. If you look at the the official statements. The first was General George Marshall. Said that there was a slow-moving aircraft 200 miles an hour or less, between 9,000 and 18,000 feet of altitude. There were varying numbers reported, up to 25 aircraft, which were assumed to be Japanese, because this is right after Pearl Harbor. No bombs were dropped, and no aircraft were shot down. There's a well-known UFO celebrity that's been on the History Channel, and I listened to an interview that he gave with NPR, and his contention was that this clearly was an extraterrestrial craft. It was flying too high to be identified. Obviously it was UFO, and the anti-aircraft artillery didn't hit it. It was completely ineffective. Well, the reality, in my opinion, the television celebrity said that it was too high to be anything terrestrial. Well, if you look at a cruising altitude of 9,000 to 18,000 feet, the Japanese heavy bomber at the time, the Mitsubishi Type 97, was well within its operating limits. Obviously, it was a UFO. Some researchers misrepresent the effectiveness of the anti-aircraft artillery. It was things weren't done then like they are now. Bombs were dropped optically. There were no smart bombs. There were some smart weapons came up in the Luftwaffe later in the year, but the Japanese didn't have them at that time. So one of the main goals of the anti-aircraft artillery, the heavy artillery, wasn't to shoot the plane down. It was to knock it off of its bombing run. So, for example, I've read reports compiled by the 8th Air Force over Europe, where it took over 8,000 German shells to bring down an Allied bomber, an American bomber of the 8th Air Force in the daylight raid over Germany. So they're putting a lot of ordnance in the air to try to get the plane off its bombing run, not necessarily shoot it down, because it was assumed the fighters would jump when they left the target area. Now, one of the reports that came out at the time was it was a balloon, which we laugh at now. But there actually were balloon weapons in service with the Japanese Army at that time, quite effectively. In China, they released bubonic plague on the Chinese civilians and army more than once by balloon. So it's possible, and later in the war they did launch balloon attacks against the United States, so it's possible that it could have been a balloon. The reason I bring that up is, if you've ever read any of John Keel's work in Operation Trojan Horse, he goes back through the years and years and years of UFO reports, and there's been a long documented history of UFOs turning up, just seems slightly beyond our technology, and then in the next war you find this stuff being employed. Like in the prior to the First World War, there was airships. Well, there was Zeppelins bombed London. Prior to the Second World War, there were big mystery airplanes that flew in all kinds of weather. Second World War, you had heavy bombers over Europe in all kinds of weather. During the war, there were the famous Foo Fighters, which have turned up again now in the form of Tic Tacs or drones. Between the wars, there were mystery rockets, which have turned up. So Keel goes into
Tic Tac videos.
He uses the lore and the reports, historical reports of UFOs to say that
they're weird.
What this really is some of this is really just a grand deception that's been going on for centuries. So, the Los Angeles UFO, the Battle of Los Angeles could have been a UFO, but it parallels history, and there's also been documented history that Keel goes into, where the Space Brothers come and they promise all these things, but they never quite deliver. So, we've still got atomic weapons, and we've still got pollution and all this other stuff. So who knows? But that's kind of, to me, that's a good definition of a sacred cow. So another thing that's kind of a sacred cow is you got to take a pilgrimage to experience the paranormal. And Mary talked on this in her presentation about sitting on her front porch and seeing Bigfoot. You know, if you want to go to North Carolina or someplace to experience some, you know, renowned haunted location, that's great. If you can afford it, that's fine. But you don't have to. You know, most of this stuff, if not all of it, is in your own community, and very well, like Mary said, it could be in your own backyard. So there's, thanks to paranormal entertainment, there's a tendency to want to go and be seen with the celebrities, which is, you know, again, that's okay. But I saw one regional event that's coming up this year. It cost $58 an hour to attend. I saw another one, $1,000 a night.
All right.
You shouldn't, you know, again, if you can afford it and you want to do it, that's fine. You don't have to. Another famous one, you know, is the Skinwalker Ranch. Now, obviously, the Skinwalker Ranch has a lot going on. It's been well documented in books and in the media. But how many knew the current owner of the Skinwalker Ranch has trademarked that name? So if you wanted to write a book about the Skinwalker Ranch, you couldn't use the word Skinwalker Ranch without permission. You'd be violating a trademark, because that's how the guy's making some of his money. So, I mean, it's okay, but the thing about the Skinwalker Ranch is, and this is based on work in Greene County, there's 2 locations I know of in Greene County, and I think a third, I haven't finished looking at it yet, that has the exact same activity. These are documented in the books I wrote. The first one, it's the chapter on the angry spirits of the land. The second book, it focuses on the historical society. Very Skinwalker Ranch type activity at the farm. There's animal mutilations, balls of light, shimmering, glimmering, like shielded, cloaked creatures, like I hate to use this comparison, like the Predator in the movie, that kind of thing. At the Historical Society,
scoot over.
I haven't seen any animal mutilations, but there's been like goblin-like creatures, balls of light, shadow entities, a lot of non-human activity, a lot of strange sounds, bad smells. So there's a definite parallel that seems to be the same type of activity at the Skinwalker Ranch, but it's in sleepy old Greene County, PA. So, you know, paranormal, the movie Ghostbusters and paranormal entertainment, there's a tendency to think you have to spend a lot of money on electronics. If that's your thing, that's fine. It's not mine for a lot of reasons. As I said before, I'm skeptical. These things can be influenced by magnetic fields that people don't check before they go in. I've done investigations with this gear, or some of it. When we would go in and kill everything at the breaker box, so there was no power on the house. So again, it's limited in that you need to do it at night so you can see the lights flash. I'm a little, you know, when I got started in this years ago, one of the things that investigators would say, well, if you live in a house and you think it's haunted and something's bothering you, then leave your computer on, leave the TV on, something that generates a electromagnetic field. Well, all these entities, it's believed, are comprised of energy, and they give off energy just as we do. So my belief in this is, if you're going into a location repeatedly and the same devices are being shut off, it's not the entities that are doing it, and we'll get to that in a minute. My friends at Outsider Paranormal, SWPA, and I have had this conversation more than once. I'm very skeptical of EVPs, partly because I ran farm machinery when I was a kid, that you couldn't wear ear protection because you had to hear it. So I do have some hearing loss, but also I'm skeptical enough that I want to be talking to someone that I can believe that they've eliminated all the other possibilities. I'm not a big fan of the Estes method because I have to rely on the guy that's got the headphones on. Like a friend of mine tells me, maybe I've got trust issues. Could be. Interpretation, subjective. And there's been some claims made that you can actually create EVP through psychokinesis. I haven't tried it. Maybe you can. There's a good example of the Estes method. The guy sitting in a local library at home, with headphones on. I have no idea what he can hear. He could be listening to Lady Gaga for all I know. But he's giving answers, and part of my thing is with paranormal entertainment is they interpret for you and put it up on the screen, which in my mind can lead you to come to a conclusion which may or may not be true. Now, I will say, my friend Charlotte out on the West Coast has a team of 35 investigators working 4 states. She's becoming a little more skeptical of EVP because of what you have to go through to hear it or interpret it. But I will say this, I've talked to Damon and Fred and Chuck and Chuck's wife at Outsider Paranormal, and I'm going to work with them this summer. We're going to look at hopefully be able to coordinate schedules, look at a couple places. And they know full well that I'm very skeptical of electronics. So I'm sort of hoping what they'll do is maybe enable me to think outside my box, where perhaps I'm a little too critical of it. So maybe this time next year I'll have some conclusions. So all the stuff, the accoutrements you need if you're going to do a quote-unquote investigation, the SOS camera, the vibration ball, the meters, the REM pod, phasm cameras, laser grid, my personal favorite, the interactive teddy bear, which I actually had not heard of till recently. That's all good. I don't use any of that stuff. I use dowsing rods, a couple of trail cameras, sometimes a digital camera, and very, very rarely a digital recorder. What I do is I go in ahead, I do the research on the property and get the background. I go in a day or two before I'm going to do the investigation with the dowsing rods and ask the entities if it's okay, if I've got their permission to be there. And I ask where I can set up my camera. And I have not had any trouble with the camera, but I've gotten some really good results. I don't have problems with batteries going dead, ever. So my theory on that is, I know the conventional wisdom is the entities use the power in the AA batteries so they can manifest themselves. Well, in 7 years at that farm in Greene County, there would be a lot of us go out in the evenings to do these conventional investigations, and there only would be batteries drained in two of the devices we were using. The car batteries were never drained. The electric fence charger battery was never drained. Nothing else was ever drained. So it became apparent to us that there is an intelligence behind this, and there's some devices they apparently didn't care for. And my personal belief is it isn't so much the device, it isn't that they're draining the batteries to get the energy to manifest. It's the device. The electromagnetic energy that it's giving off is incompatible with the entity that you're investigating. So it's like when country A jams country B's radar. So if you're dealing with an entity that's capable of leaving where it's at and manifesting in your reality, and you're doing stuff that annoys it or could even be harmful, then in my mind, that's what they're going to shut off first. And that's what I'm working on, trying to gain more evidence. I believe I've got enough that I can say that in public, but I'm still working on it.
That's interesting.
So, one of the problems with paranormal entertainment is what my co-author Rosemary Ellen Guiley called hamster wheel ghost hunting. It's a materialistic examination and exploration in the spiritual world. So in other words, you're looking for a secular answer to a spiritual question. There's an addition to technology. When she and I first started working together, we used conventional equipment. By the time we finished, we'd abandoned all of it and worked almost entirely on intuition. This has been promoted heavily by the paranormal entertainment field. It tends to be homocentric. We expect the entities to interact with us on our terms, but in reality, we're actually, if you look at the spirit world in the traditional Appalachian sense, we're actually on their turf as opposed to they're on ours. It's very capital intensive. Some of the practitioners make unsubstantiated claims, and it's disrespectful. If you're watching a show and the guy says, you make the light blink, or you do this, that's you understood, that's an order. That's the kind of stuff you say to your dog. You go over there and lay down, you go over there and sit down, you shut up.
I've always thought that.
So just imagine you're talking to a deceased human that way, let alone something that's far beyond a deceased human's capabilities. Now our boy Abe here, he was pretty bright. Always used to laugh. When I was a kid, there was 5 log houses within walking distance of my parents' house that were built in the mid to late 18th and early 19th century, and they were still split rail fences. So I was in elementary school, and they were talking about, Abe Lincoln used to split rails, and I used to think, big deal. So did my grandmother. I didn't get what the big deal was. But one of the best quotes I've ever heard about the paranormal world, and I don't know if this gentleman was the one who originally said it, but he's the one I heard say it first, was Dan Hagman. The paranormal is more normal than you think. And that's key. The paranormal is as common as rain. It's just we've been taught not to see it and not to look for it, and people that do see it misinterpret it because the spirit world often does not communicate on our terms, it communicates in metaphors. So if you do investigations like I do, you have to learn to look for the signs. Just as in folklore, when you want to tell what the weather's going to do, you look for the signs in the what the spirit world is telling you, and it's interpreted through the folklore. So why are we so fascinated with the spirit world? It's because we've been tens of thousands of years trying to glimpse what's on the other side. It's always been fascinating to us as a species. It's a common experience worldwide, and countless hours have been spent trying to explain it. So, here's another quote: what has been will be again, what has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Does anybody know who's said that? Correct. It's written by Solomon. So there's nothing new under the sun. None of this stuff that we're looking into, in my opinion, is anything new. It's been here time immemorial. So like in, dogmen, missing time, UFOs, abductions, lights in the sky, ghosts and apparitions. It's all been here probably longer than we have. And again, if you in my opinion, a big part of the paranormal field now is homocentric. It looks at it from, with the humans as the center of it, as in, a good comparison would be in the old days when the Earth was considered to be the center of the universe and everything revolves around it. Well, that's the way a lot of investigators approach this. I'm here, I'm an investigator, we're going to do things on my terms. That's not the way it works. And if you, as I said before, they want to use secular means to examine the spirit world or the spirituality, because there is a spiritual component to all paranormal experiences. And if you want to really look at how to interpret the spirit world, you don't necessarily need to spend a lot of money on electronics, because it's already been done. And this is one place that a lot of people don't want to go. It's religion. I don't care, you pick a religion. They've all looked at it. We've all got a constitutional right to worship as we please, or not worship as we please. But if you look at Islam and study the jinn, and for example, a lot of the stuff that's talked about today and in conferences all over the country are explained in the Quran. There are elements of the Christian Bible that were eliminated, such as the Book of Enoch, that explain it as well. So, our ancestors knew about this stuff. Now, we have a tendency in the secular Western world with the quote-unquote scientific mind, well, it's got to be an alien in his spaceship that, uses a wormhole or warp drive or a jump engine or whatever and travels millions of light years. Well, some of them could be, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are what Keel called ultra-terrestrials. They're from other dimensions. The aliens are actually native to this, some of them, in my opinion, are actually native to this planet. And they're explained by the old Celtic beliefs, the old pagan beliefs, the old Jewish beliefs, the old Christian beliefs, and the old Islamic beliefs, and probably every other religion. Those are just the ones. I'm sort of familiar with Islam as it pertains to the jinn. I'm becoming more familiar with the Christian lore, as Michael Heiser has written it about fallen angels, and I'm working on Celtic stuff. So one final quote for the evening. The study of the great world religions, and notably Islam, would yield valuable clues as to the true nature of the so-called UFO phenomenon. And in my opinion, you could put Dogman, Sasquatch, hauntings, you name it, in there. Not all of it, but a good portion of it. So the true nature of the so-called UFO phenomenon, and would eliminate much of the fatuous space age mythology that has been spawned in such profusion over the last 3 decades. And that was written by Gordon Crichton in Flying Saucer Review in 1983. I know it's considered taboo to speak of religion, but from my standpoint of the Appalachian folk magic and Protestant Christianity, these guys that are giving you their secular explanation, which requires faith on their part to believe because they can't prove it either, they're preaching a religion too. And in my mind, why do it twice when it's already been done? And I realize, you got to cross cultured lines and that sort of thing. But if you study Appalachian folklore, that's already been done because it's kind of a blend, it's a homogenized folk belief. So that's my conclusion. Do you have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
When you use your dowsing rods, you have another piece of metal that the rod is actually in that.
Yeah, the question was about my dowsing rods. My dowsing rods are the best way. I have 2 pairs. One solid copper that are in a sleeve, which I don't care for because they're kind of heavy. And the other pair, the other set is, the best way to describe it is the metal the coat hangers are made out of, and they're in brass sleeves. They work really well. The copper ones, and I discussed this with the outsider, I bought them because I thought they would work better, but they're really heavy and they seem to be hard to move.
Do they need to be inside?
Not to my knowledge, but if you find ones that you like, don't let anybody else handle them. Yeah, just you. If you find a pair that really works for you, don't let other people touch them. And when the full moon hits, put them out where the moon can. If you ever work with people that do hot stone massages, they'll put their stones out in the full moon because they'll hold the heat, it recharges them. And same with the dowsing rods. You have to put them out in the moonlight every now and then. You had a question?
Did you ever hear Blind Frog Ranch is supposed to be right next door to Skinwalker Ranch? And then they found this element, you know, in water underground, and it, I think it was, it melts in your hand, you know, it follows the room temperature. And they weren't supposed to have this until like, you know, 100 years later, hundreds of years later.
Yeah, the question was if I'd heard of some of the other properties near the Skinwalker Ranch that are similar, and I have, and I will say, I watch very little television, and I don't look at much of that on the internet. I sort of wait till, I don't know how to say this, I'll get an impression that I'm supposed to look into something, and then I look into it. I sort of get guidance that way.
Have you ever heard of reverse speech analysis? Where people,
Yes.
Every kind of reading too.
Yes, I agree. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the jinn.
Yes.
Are they evil?
The question was, are jinn evil? Jinn are like people. Some are good, some are bad, and some are horrible. Most of them, according to the Islamic beliefs, jinn were created first, prior to man, and they were ordered to kneel down to us, and some of them rebelled. Jinn, if you've ever studied fallen angels, it's very similar. They have a hierarchy. They live in families. Jinn are not immortal. They do eventually die. There's several different classifications, but if you look at jinn lore and fairy lore and leprechauns, are all very similar, so very well could be the same entity. They're not all bad, but they all should be left alone. Because you can cross them and you have absolutely no idea. There's, in my opinion, there's jinn at the Greene County Historical Society Museum. Every time I go out there, I take the dowsing rods and I ask, and if they tell me to leave, I leave. But I was out there, I'd gotten some bobcat reports from out there, and there was snow on the ground one Sunday afternoon, and I wanted to go out when there was nobody there so I could just look. So I contacted the director and said, can I go out there and look for bobcat tracks? And he said yes. So while I was out there, you know, it was a typical haunted house thing. It sounded like somebody was moving every heavy piece of furniture in the building, coming from the second floor of the west wing. And I had my rods, and I stopped and I said, you know, is that you? And yes. And I said, would you like me to leave? And they said yes, so I left. Yes, sir.
Heard of spontaneous human combustion?
Yes.
How about Mel's?
I've heard of Mel's Hole. That's one of those things I'd have to research it more. I can't comment that on that one way or the other. I've heard of Mel's Hole. I've heard of the hole the Russians supposedly drilled. They lowered a microphone and heard people screaming in hell. So I don't know. Any other questions?
The rear.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the dry cell batteries being drained and the wet cell batteries not being drained, do you have any thoughts on why that might be?
Because the dry cell batteries were operating the annoying equipment. And see, another thing about batteries, I sold batteries for 10 years. I used to work in the automotive aftermarket. We sold wet and dry cells. Just because it's right off the shelf and right out of the factory doesn't mean it's got a charge. That's a good question about the wet cells. You know, at the farm, the fence charger is operated by a 6-volt dry cell. Old technology, it was mechanical. They never bothered it. And they never bothered any of the equipment or any of the cars. It was always 2 or 3 specific pieces of equipment. Yes, sir.
What was the article by the professor again that you referenced?
It was, it's on Esoterica, and it's, John Richards is the guy's name, and it's folk magic and Protestant Christianity in Appalachia. Yes.
How about people disappearing in national parks and they just try to get them and they're gone?
People disappearing in national parks, I know there's a lot of discussion about that. If you look at gin lore and fairy lore, that's part of it. I get the part where it could be aliens, and I get the part where it could be the government, or a lot of other things, but it could also be gin. Thought that was Santa Claus for a minute.
I used to drink gin.
Yes.
Said I used to drink gin.
Gin lore. You spell gin, is it with a J or a D?
D-J-I-N-N. Gin. D-J-I-N-N. Anyone else?
Grandpa's cop, sir.
Well, thanks a bunch. You've been a great audience. Appreciate you staying. You're welcome.
Okay, you guys, so that was the Butler Paranormal Conference. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Maybe you'll learn something new about the paranormal or cryptids or something weird or strange. Maybe it made you think outside the box a little bit, but thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you have not subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button. That'll let you know when new videos are coming, and it'll help my channel grow. But thank you guys so much for watching, and everybody have a great one. And I'm Insane Blaine, and I'm out.